Hi, I'm Jimmy Fremgen. Welcome back to Politics for People. Oh, we're here. This week, the question on everybody's mind, what the hell is a state proposition? To tell you about it, we got to go all the way back to two star-crossed politicians. One, a socialist named John Randalf Haynes. The other, a future progressive Republican named Hiram Johnson. The groundwork for the initiative system was laid by a socialist, John Randalf Haynes, in the early 1900s. When Mr. Haynes was trying to get involved in government, bribery was by far the dominant method of business in the state capital, and the state government itself was under the complete and total control of Southern Pacific Railroad, seen here making a delivery to the state capital. Haynes thought that dealing with current office holders was hopeless. So in 1907, he and some other reformers started the Lincoln Roosevelt League of Republican Clubs, which is a bit of a mouthful, but is inspired by Abraham Lincoln and Teddy Roosevelt to remake the state government from top to bottom. At the time, political parties selected their candidates in dark, smoky rooms at political conventions closed to the public. You may remember something about that. I feel like I just learned this like a couple weeks ago. I feel like somebody just told me about this. All right, that guy. Man, he's good looking. Thanks to John Randalf Haynes and his buddies, today we select our candidates through primary elections instead of having to go and wade through all the cigar smoke in these back rooms. And the only people that are forced to go to them are legislative staffers whose bosses act like they're going to get fired if they don't take their vacation time to go. The Lincoln Roosevelt League ran several candidates that year, including a guy you might be familiar with, or at least his name, if you grew up here in Sacramento. His name was Hiram Johnson, and they ran in the state's first primary election as progressive Republicans. Johnson himself, he ran on a very popular anti-Southern Pacific Railroad platform. Hiram Johnson was calling out big business long before Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, and AOC made it cool. Progressive Republican. Seems like a conflict. Progressive is defined as an individual or a party that favors or implements social reforms or new liberal ideas. I wanted to define Republican, but it's a bit hard to define Republican right now. The internet tells me that it's a member or supporter of the Republican Party, but what it means now is very different than what it meant then. And you can tell by the fact that progressive, a term that generally speaking is not usually associated with the Republican Party, is stapled onto the front of that moniker for Hiram Johnson. Anyway, Hiram Johnson's popularity helped elect a new progressive majority to the state legislature. And by the time they were done, they had enacted sweeping changes, including adopting the initiative, referendum, and recall processes. You remember the recall? That thing that gave us the governor? Don't get too starry-eyed about Hiram Johnson, though, because in addition to bringing direct democracy to California voters, he also supported the California Alien Land Law of 1913, a law that prevented Asian immigrants who were already excluded from becoming citizens just by nature of where they were from and what they looked like, from owning land in California at all. The idea was to make it so miserable to live in California for Asian immigrants that you didn't even want to come here, and for those that were already here, you wanted to leave as fast as possible. So yeah, history and its figures can be pretty complicated. Even a progressive Republican who worked with a socialist towards liberal reforms to make democracy more accessible for average Californians failed to see the fault in his own perceptions of others. Actions have consequences. And in this case, voting for Hiram Johnson did too. Because the law that he supported to prevent Asians, not even Asian Americans, but Asians from owning land in California wasn't overturned until 1953. So today, California is one of 24 states with the initiative process. It's not available federally, but it is very popular at the local level. Many local jurisdictions, including counties, cities, and towns, including this one right here, use the initiative process, but they usually call it measures to separate it from the other stuff. You usually find measures listed by letter and statewide propositions listed by number. In California, we have two types of initiative. The initiative statute allows the people to put laws on the ballot, something that's usually reserved for the state legislature. The Constitutional Amendment Initiative allows people to amend the basic documents that run how our government works. If you want to learn more about the limits of constitutional powers, check out my peaceful protest video from a couple weeks ago. Ballot initiatives tend to be the kinds of things that the legislature doesn't want to take up, whether it's too politically controversial or they just don't want to be caught voting for something. A great example of this is Prop 64 from a few years ago, which was the successor to a number of ballot initiatives to legalize cannabis. It's something that the state legislature wasn't able to pass through its normal process, so instead, we, the voters, got to vote on an issue that was considered too controversial for our elected officials. Something to know about state ballot initiatives is that passing the proposition makes it very challenging for the legislature to change the law. When I worked in the state legislature, we were often trying to amend and fix the state cannabis bill, and it was really challenging for us because the initiative itself specifically stated that we had to have a 2/3 majority in the state legislature to do it, and it had to be specifically relevant to the context of the legislation. The idea was the people voted on this, so the legislature doesn't get to come in and screw it up. To get a proposition on the ballot, you have to meet some standards. The biggest hurdle, generally speaking, is the signature requirement. It takes a lot of signatures to get an initiative on the ballot. Right now in California, to get a statute initiative on the ballot, it takes 623,212 signatures. To get a constitutional amendment to change the fundamental bedrock of how we govern this state, you have to have 997,139 signatures. So that brings us to you. And if you're voting in California this year, you get to make the law on 12 different issues, and you don't even have to run for office. In 2020, those issues include rent control, allowing 17-year-olds to vote, and whether Uber and Grubhub should be required to offer benefits to their employees or drivers. Just like we expect our legislators to be informed, you should be too. And to help you, I'm going to be doing a series breaking down each of these with factual analysis and arguments from both sides. If you want to see my research process, I'll be live streaming it on either Instagram or Twitch. I haven't decided yet, and I'll let you know. Props to the Secretary of State, though, because when I was prepping for this episode and prepping for doing the research on the ballot initiatives, I went straight to their website. They're the ones that are in charge of maintaining our elections and making sure that they're free and equitable. And the website is a fantastic resource, and they don't get enough credit for it. I'll also include some resources below and at jimmyfremgen.com. I'll see you soon. Hey, thanks for watching Politics for People. As you know from every YouTube video on the planet, I want you to do two things right now. I want you to subscribe, and I want you to like the post. Thumbs up button. If you're feeling really generous, hit that little bell down there to get notified when I make new videos.